him and his uncle were in the tent, and his uncle was beating a lion on the head with a mag light, shouting, "We're finished, we're finished." There's something incredibly satisfying about cooking on a fire under African skies, hearing a lion calling in the distance, but in a Tuk Tuk. What we talk about it as is people just going a little bit further to just make the world that much of a better place. The farmer has got a support structure in place for the point where he is old, and his children and everything can rely on the farm that he's built to take care of him when he is older. However, the wildlife ranger, who commits his entire existence to protecting wildlife, and obviously with all of the risks of buffalo, elephant, lion, but you will get to the end of that very sort of long slog of a job, and then you don't have that farm to fall back on. You don't have, and the support structures surrounding retiring wildlife rangers really are, it's non-existent.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast. Some of our favorite interviews have been from Africa, listening to stories from the Kalahari, lions, tigers, elephants, and now all the way down to centipedes.
This is a fascinating episode loaded with stories from Africa. Better yet, it's centered on a group of filmmakers raising awareness and raising money to help support the wildlife rangers who are responsible for protecting the entire ecosystem in the most remote places of Africa. This is an interview we've been working on for over 4 months. We spent several weeks of research to verify that we're bringing to you trustworthy information, knowing that there's plenty of organizations, in air quotes, raising money for a worthy cause.
Well, behind the scenes, that may not be the reality.
A couple things to keep in mind as you listen to this episode. After a failed attempt of recording this interview a month prior, Ivo and Jasper secured a hostel in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, to get reasonable Wi-Fi. So you'll hear some clanking, some banging in the background. It was also a night for them with elephants roaming around that had the dogs barking. This is in the raw, even after the editing process of filtering out as much of that background noise as possible.
How passionate are you about Africa and helping to preserve the entire ecosystem? Not just one amazing animal, like the massive elephants or lions, but the entire ecosystem. How well educated are you on where your donations go? And would you agree that men and women who devote their lives to protecting Africa's wildlife is where it all starts? This is looking at the bigger picture, not zoomed in on just one animal or one village. As a first time and possibly the only time we will ever ask you to consider donating a few dollars to what we've determined is not only worthwhile and valid, but extraordinarily important to what we as overlanders value. Wild places remaining wild, free and thriving as they are meant to be, helping to support those who are the boots on the ground doing the hard work, not as tourists or out-of-town conservationists, but the same people who live there, the same people who have only known and have only ever been to their own village and a few neighboring villages. Lastly, and the truly fun part, this 5-man film crew have only 2 tuk-tuks and camera gear.
Their energy, youth, and natural storytelling gifts are exactly what it takes to raise awareness and get the real, raw, day-to-day realities in the smallest of African villages.
Do be sure to follow them on social media under Tuk South. Their YouTube channel is an equally important and a fun means of learning more about them. And our request for you to consider is 28 cents. If you have the means to put 28 cents together for 365 days or 182 days, roughly 100 a year in U.S., will support the needs of one ranger for 1 year, from boots to food to his family.
And to add just a little bit of clarity to that, that's if 24 of us donate roughly $100, which breaks down to, again, roughly 28 cents a day. That will help support. We as a podcast can help support one ranger for 1 year. Not a big goal. There's thousands of people that listen to this podcast every week. If only 24 of us scrape together 28 cents times 365 days, we've got it nailed.
We greatly appreciate you, and you can donate directly at tuksouth.com, TUKSOUTH.com, or from the link on their Instagram page at Tuk South. Then select the Ranger Donation tab.
I hope you're ready for a wildly entertaining episode with endless African stories from a Tuk Tuk. During a night of elephants searching for food that kept everybody scurrying about.
Be sure to tag us on the social medias so we can see what kind of awesomeness you're up to. Hashtag GHT Overland. This episode is brought to you by GHT Overland. Please keep in mind we'd love your support. Keeping all the algorithm spirits happy is kind of necessary. So if you wouldn't mind, at minimum, Level 1 Love is taking a second to leave a rating on iTunes or the podcast platform you listen on. Anything from a short little I like it to whatever you're feeling. Without constant love from you, we're just sludge at the bottom of a lost cold coffee cup. Level 2 Love is found on GHToverland.com. This is where we maintain a list of recommended apps, books, and gear. Thank you to everyone who has used these links. This also helps us earn a commission, costing you nothing extra. Level 3 Love is on Patreon. This is your opportunity to support the GHT Overland podcast with monthly little thank yous that help us pay web hosting fees, podcast hosting, and all the things that keep the podcast growing and improving. This is also how you get your hands on some sweet swag. Thank you for joining us as we pursue a renewed life mission of putting the best in people and nature on display, while tackling the ugly Goliath of today by consistently placing positivity and respect for others in front of everything else.
Ivo and Jasper, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it from Tuk South, and we're looking forward to learning more about what you guys are doing. But thank you for taking the time to join us today.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah,
we're honored. True.
Yeah, it's amazing to be given a platform on a podcast like this, because we've been bumbling around Africa. I wouldn't say it's quite driving, but bumbling around Africa for nearly 9 months now, and it's great to reach a different audience and talk about what we're doing and the cause that we,
in our own weird little overlanding niche, the slowest overlanders on the planet.
Yeah, you've seen a Hilux, you've seen a Tacoma, you've seen all of those, but I bet you haven't seen one of these, because we get some odd looks and all. But it's still an overlanding ring, I promise.
Yeah, average speed of 16 kilometers an hour on dirt roads.
Tell us where are you guys currently at?
We are at Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. So we've just driven through Mozambique. We got into Zimbabwe, and then we've basically followed the Zambezi Valley up to the Botswana border, and we're imminently heading into Botswana.
Yeah, and it's an amazing part of the world.
Okay.
We didn't really know anything about it because originally we're from Kenya, so this isn't really our stomping ground. We're a good 5,000 k's away from home. But when you drive through the pit that we've just driven to, I think it's the longest continuous line of wildlife reserves. It runs from the Mozambican border up into Angola, the southern side of the Zambezi Valley, and it is amazing. I mean, the roads are terrible, but it's a super wild section of the thing. And yeah, we've just arrived back into a Wi-Fi network and into a bustling town, which is it's stark contrast.
Okay, awesome. So what's the weather like this time of year?
So we are just coming off the tail end of winter at the moment, and winter in a tuk tuk with no doors. Everyone may believe Africa to be just permanently warm, and but the winters here do hit hard, and we've just been in southern Zimbabwe where we were having to wear sleeping bags in the back of the tuk tuk because you can't close the doors. So people in the back just have this constant torrent of bitterly cold wind. And we were filming a conservation outfit down there in the south. Now we've luckily dropped back, we've climbed back up into the north where it's a bit warmer now. But yeah, we've been dealing with some serious cold, and now we're about to deal with extreme heats of the Kalahari and Namib deserts in summer.
Yeah, because we're really terrible organization-wise. Like, having a plan isn't really our strong point. And so, yeah, we were like, we'll miss winter in Cape Town, so we'll go to Zimbabwe. Got to Zimbabwe, absolutely loved it. And now we're staring down the gun barrel of, I think it gets up to 47 in the day.
Yeah, near 50.
Near 50. And we're in a tuk tuk, with no air conditioning, no fans. I mean, it has no doors, which is a help.
No proper insulation.
You can only go, our top speed is 55 if we're going downhill, kilometers per hour.
And that's with the wind behind you.
Yeah. So that's like 30 miles an hour, I think. So you don't really cool very well. So it's going to be interesting. But it's hot at the moment. We've just been driving through a section, as I said, the Zambezi River. And we've been driving through some crazy bushfires. Like, it's really, really dry. We actually camped on a dried out dam the other day, and we had it was nearly 270 degrees of bushfire around us. It was wild. So yeah, it's very, very dry where we are at the moment.
Okay, wow. So fill our audience in, if you would. You guys are raising money for the rangers in Africa, and you're driving 2 tuk-tuks. Can you give us the view of what you're doing and how you're doing it?
Yeah.
So we were essentially all forced to come back to Kenya during COVID because of lockdowns everywhere. We all had very different plans. Ivo was off to do marine biology in Western Australia. I was off to Canada wanting to drive to Patagonia, and then two of our other team, one was working in Indonesia, and then the other one was in England. But we were all forced back home during COVID to Kenya. And the lockdowns weren't like what you had in the States. We still had access we live in the northern frontier of Kenya, so we still had access to all of the wildlands. We obviously, with little to do due to COVID, we'd spend a lot of times on safari, overlanding up into the bush, and we started to notice that from a conservation perspective, we've all grown up in wildlife conservancies. So the conservation's always been close to our hearts. We started to notice that wildlife, due to the tourism industry having collapsed in Kenya, and Kenya having to rely quite overtly on the tourism industry, that a lot of people had lost their jobs and were resorting to poaching, illegal logging, charcoaling, and the rangers that were meant to be policing this had lost almost the entirety of their salary, yet their workload had increased quite drastically.
Like, to give you an idea of the statistics, we were actually talking to some rangers in Vic Falls this morning, because we try and do this wherever we go. But to give you a direct example from today, I'm sorry about the dogs, but there will be elephants cruising around. But yeah, they had an 80% loss of donor money income. Their snaring, which is their main cause of wildlife deaths, went up 1,000% over the COVID times. So if you imagine you've lost 80% of your income and you're workload has gone up by 1,000%. And you can't give up, by the way, because if you take a day off, then animals die. And Africa is a wonderful, wonderful place because it still has that amazing, amazing biodiversity that other continents unfortunately have lost over the time. So yeah, it's very, very important to keep that where it is. And COVID was absolutely detrimental to these guys' workload. And this is a story that we found in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Malawi, everywhere we have been. The COVID pandemic had such a detrimental effect on the men and women who have given over their lives to protect areas of wild spaces for the future. And
the only solution to this is tuk-tuks, because because we just thought, okay, if we're going to try, first of all, we wanted to try and film a documentary on the impacts of COVID on conservation, but we also wanted to play our role in trying to raise money for wildlife rangers that were dealing with all of this. And so we chose the most absurd city-orientated vehicle, and we thought, let's convert this for overlanding and the bush. And yeah, let's drive to South Africa, but now we've changed it. Now we're driving from Cape Town, and then we're putting on a boat to Montevideo in Uruguay, driving down to Patagonia, up to Alaska.
We're going around the world, man.
And then through Asia into Europe. And we thought first of all, the ridiculous...
With those two tuk-tuks?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
In the two absolute weapon overlanding vehicles.
You guys have lost your mind.
Yeah. Average speed of 30 kilometers an hour for a serious distance.
And also, when it gets to dirt roads, when we were doing this back road, that average speed drops down to, we drove for 10 hours, and our average speed was 14 kilometers an hour, which I don't even know what that is in miles. That's like 8, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could comfortably jog way faster than that. So we're pretty much planning to walk around the world, but do none of the walk. Push a lot, though.
Very good.
But the absurdity of the vehicle means that if you were to place a tuk-tuk in hardcore savannah or just in mountainscapes, it confuses the brain to the social media scroller or anything, and it provides that level of confusion is enough to potentially ensnare them into, what is this tuk-tuk doing in the middle of the Kalahari Desert? And then hopefully that interest funnels down into donations for wildlife rangers. And we're a film crew, so we try and film as many conservation outfits we find along the way. That's why we've been driving now for 9 months, and we've only made it to Zimbabwe, which is actually not very far from Kenya. But that's because every conservation outfit that we find, normally operating from a grassroots level, has no access to videography. So we try and stitch together these smaller social media based videos for them, but also longer format to try and raise exposure and potential funding for the diversity of conservation outfits that we meet along the way.
Conservation is obviously very close to our heart, but it's not just limited to that. If there's a really cool cultural thing that we find along the way, or a community thing, so we filmed community-run skate parks where they have free boards, free pads, free lessons every day, and it's partnered with an orphanage. If we find what we talk about it as is people just going a little bit further to just make the world that much of a better place. We don't have a huge amount of money, so we can't give donations of that. But what we do have is we've got cameras, we've got editing gear, and we have the ability to make them promotional videos. And whether that puts 100 eyes on them or 100,000, it's the least we could do. And it's our way, we feel, of giving back for the opportunity that we've been given by this.
Okay, very good. So you've got 2 tuk-tuks, and have you named the tuk-tuks?
We certainly have, but we've only one is fairly nameless at the moment. So we have the MVP, most valuable player of the trip, is Princess Buttercup.
Oh, she's a darling.
Who is our van.
But you should see her. I don't know if you've seen photos, but it's the single most beautiful vehicle. Honestly, people have photos of combis on the wall and stuff like that. I honestly think when this tuk-tuk gets a little bit more famous, people will have her on the wall, because she's an old Italian design, very boxy van, Tuk Tuk.
It's got strong VW combi sort of vibes, but it also has our solar panels in it. We have a fold-out kitchen that comes from it. Probably a bit too much stuff. We even have a projector screen. So Princess Buttercup turns into a 100-inch movie screen because when you've been in the bush for months and months with the same people, not really seeing it, and we've been in very remote areas of Africa, so you don't really see many other people. It's good to just, at the end of the day, wind down with a bit of Tuk cinema, we call it.
Yeah, and it's a great way of...
So we're probably carrying a bit too much in Princess Buttercup.
Yeah, there's so many things that we look at. Like,
how much does Princess Buttercup weigh?
Oh, we wouldn't put her on the scales. It would be terrifying.
She's not been dieting recently.
That would be rude.
Exactly, that would be... And especially to broadcast it on the news, my God, she would have a fit. But unfortunately, she was...
Is Princess Buttercup the only Tuk Tuk to have solar panels?
Maybe. That's a great point. I never thought of that. I reckon, yeah. And you would look at it, and when you ignore the 3 wheels part, you're like, this is an overlanding rig. It has LED lights built into it. We have a pressurized shower that we've used 2 times because it turned out to be a bit too heavy.
Water is actually, washing. Turns out, when it's such a sort of sparse amount of time between areas where you can fill up your water, that you really do have to focus on the whole drinking aspect rather than the washing aspect.
Yeah.
When you are very weight sensitive and can only realistically carry about 60 liters at a time. So the shower has gone fairly unused.
We weren't really thinking. Actually, no, we were thinking. I designed it on AutoCAD. And it was great because I designed the whole back of the box, and I was looking at other overlanding rigs, mostly from the States. Actually, you guys are really switched on with how you design, overlanding setup. So I was designing this box and put this water pipe, and I stupidly put the shower water pipe right at the back, behind the back wheels. It's rear engine. It has a big steel box at the back, and that there's not a huge amount of weight over that front wheel. It's actually nothing because the front wheel is the front of the car. So we went up the first hill, and I was driving, and the 3 other guys, we stopped on the hill because she's only got 8 horsepower. So she's not got too many beans. And we stopped, and I was like, right, guys, get out, push. And they started pushing, and I sort of released the clutch, and it did the most monumental wheelie you've ever seen in your life. All I could see was sky out the front of the windscreen, and then one of the wheels got traction, so it was then sky. I was like, I'm going to crash all the people behind me, and then it started doing this sort of pirouette movement, which was kind of terrifying. So after that, the shower was bent, which was smart, I feel.
Very good. Well, it almost sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Honestly, anything Princess Buttercup does is... If
you had an aerial drone shot of that would have been great.
Yeah, we actually did do a wheelie video the other day because Princess Buttercup is permanently wheeling, even with the lack of the shower, and we put fuel jerry cans. We mounted fuel jerry cans at the front to try and mitigate these dangers. It still happens the whole time, and normally when you're stalled on a hill, but the feeling of a complete loss of a horizon, like you have the horizon and then suddenly just sky. It really is. It's a bizarre feeling.
Have you ever wheelied a car? Because I certainly haven't. And so it's wheeling a motorbike, kind of all right. I don't know why, because I feel like you can kind of jump off. Wheeling, it's scary, man.
Oh dear. Well, let's go through some details real quick. The solar panels. How much solar do you have, and how are you able to keep all of your camera gear charged?
So we overpowered the solar. We put more panels than our battery should take, because we were like, look, we don't charge at night. We don't run any appliances off it. It's 200 watts of solar panels. We have a 500 watt inverter because then it can handle the load in the day. So we charge mostly in the day. So we'll put a drone on there, 2 cameras, 2 editing laptops, because our battery good. We've got a really good solar controller. So an MPPT one, and a not so good battery because we kind of ran out of money at that point. So that's quite heavy. And the weight of batteries, we would love to go to lithium ion, But at the time in Kenya, it was just past our budget. So we've got a lead acid battery in there that is heavy.
So heavy.
So heavy.
And then how much gas do you guys carry?
5 kilos is all we carry.
But we're normally cooking on wood fires, because the majority of our trip has been spent wild camping, and the areas we tend to enjoy the most is proper wilderness. So there, it's very there's deadwood all over the place, and we're very cautious. We always dig a pit and everything, but and there's something incredibly satisfying about cooking on a fire under African skies, hearing a lion calling in the distance,
but there's
in a tuk tuk.
Well, yeah. As long as you've got Princess Buttercup on your side.
Yeah. But genuinely, the other day, because of what Jasper said, like lions are quite something. They are a very scary animal. Because you can hear them from 5 kilometers away, and they're very good at. And then they operate at night. And when you're in a tuk tuk, other than Princess Buttercup, which has a tiny cab, there's not really many places to run.
Yeah, got no doors.
With a car, you can always be like, well, if the lions get too close, we'll jump in the car, close the doors, and they can roam around the camp. But yeah, that's the other reason why we have fires. Like it's very comforting, and it's a very good form of protection for us at night, because other than getting in a tent, which is when you're in a tent when there's a lion around, that fabric is incredibly thin all of a sudden. We try to not cook on gas as much as possible, especially since we've got into Zimbabwe, Botswana, and when we were in the north of Kenya, where there's quite a high population density of lions.
And the lions here are really no joke. Like in East Africa, where we grew up, there are lions, but you don't really worry about them that much. Here, they seem to have an entirely different breed of lion. The whole tapestry of stories that we've encountered of people actually having their tents ripped open by lions, and we've just driven one of the most remote roads in Zimbabwe, connecting essentially the Mozambique border of Zimbabwe to where we are at the moment, the Botswana border. It basically spans the entire length of Kariba, Lake Kariba. And it is really it's a continuous series of national reserves, and the whole the whole way along it is just rammed with lions. Too many of them. And
everyone we spoke to was just like, guys, be careful, man. Lions are around. Like one guy had a lion, ripped through the side of his tent. He thinks it tripped on his guy rope, and then got angry with the tent, so it ripped through the side of his tent, and him and his uncle were in the tent, and his uncle was beating a lion on the head with a mag light, shouting, "We're finished. We're finished." So yeah, that's the tales that we've heard. So we actually have a fire going all night.
So if you're in a tuk-tuk, and whether it be a lion or whether it be an elephant that decides you're a new squeaky toy, how do you get away? What do you do?
You don't really.
Yeah, you pray.
You pray.
You pray. Okay.
You're slow. Yeah, and you look in your mirrors. I had it on almost the second day of our trip. We were on this game ranch filming an amazing ranger program there. It's called Barana Conservancy, and they have crack operations going on there. So we went there, and I was following the other tuk-tuk. I was in Princess Buttercup, and she's a bit slow. And I was going up a hill, and the tuk-tuk in front of us spooked a herd of elephants, and they had young babies with them. They spooked them, and then I came trundling up the hill. And when you go up a hill in a tuk-tuk, you're going 10 kilometers an hour.
If that, maybe five.
And I turned to my left, and behind the bushes, about 20 meters away, was a herd of really quite angry female elephants with babies. And one of them started coming for the tuk-tuk. And genuinely, my thought was, right, time to bail out. I was like, I can run up this hill so much faster than this. So I had one hand on the door ready to just leap. But Buttercup would have been fine. She's tough.
And but these things flatten land. Like we have near our house where we set off from, we have a couple of Land Cruisers in this national park there that have been flattened to the height of about 4 foot. So this Land Cruiser,
not even.
No, maybe 3
maybe
foot.
3.
Yeah, but flat,
This is a
like
70 series Land Cruiser.
just completely destroyed. So when they encounter our tinfoil tuk-tuks, you just couldn't imagine what they'd do, and very easily.
Yeah, but luckily they've been very, very chilled with us, because I don't think they feel threatened by something that is that small and
that slow.
We never really startle them. They hear us from a mile off because we've got a single cylinder diesel engine going. You can hear it from a mile away. So luckily that's on our side so far.
So I can only imagine you guys have seen some pretty amazing landscape. Is there any one place that you can think of that comes to mind immediately that really stands out for you?
Probably,
there's a couple.
but the probably the most significant on our trip is this place called Mount Malanje in southern Malawi. It basically borders Mozambique and the southernmost point of Malawi, and it's an iceberg, so like an old sort of a volcano that didn't quite pop. So you've got the largest continuous cliff faces in Africa. It's very similar to Yosemite, but Yosemite rising out of these old tea estates. The whole fringe below it is tea estates, and then you climb up to the top. And we spent a month filming the conservation outfit that's responsible for protecting it. And you've got these beautiful freshwater streams. You don't need to walk with water. You can just drink from the stream.
It's incredible.
Cloud forests, plains, like boulder fields, and all of these old sort of 19th century British huts that were built during the sort of colonial era. So it's this weird passage into time.
And it's amazing up there. Like, I don't know if you've watched Lord of the Rings, but the top, you have plains there that look like they're straight out of Rohan. And then you drop into a crystal clear stream, and the other side is ancient cloud forest. And then you pop over the top, and suddenly you're just in rugged rock mountain section. And the cliffs, they're like, there's one of them that's 2 kilometers or something like that. I may have got that wrong.
No, 1.9.
1.9 kilometers of sheer granite cliffs. And so it's called the Island in the Sky. And wow. And everywhere is perfect walking tracks. So we use Gaia GPS. So you don't need to take guides with you or anything. We took a guide because it supports local industry and the local economy. But it's mind-blowing. You have waterfalls that come off the side of this. You can be swimming in a pool, and 20 foot away from you is a sheer drop that's like
over a kilometer.
And you're looking out and the sun setting over Malawi, and you don't see people up there. You've got walking trails, and we were up there for a month, and we probably saw 20 people. But you look down on humanity underneath you, like a big carpet of humanity. And a very, very surreal feeling where you're in complete wilderness, swimming in a pool, on a waterfall, on the edge of a cliff, staring at the hustle and bustle of real life 2,000 meters below you. It was mind-blowing. It really was.
Has there been any specific location that really locked in your commitment to what you're doing and helping the rangers?
There's this stratovolcano in the north of Tanzania, next to the Serengeti and then Ngorongoro, called Oldonyo Lengai. And that is true wilderness, a proper desert. And with the desert comes a lot of sand that we were permanently stuck in. Their human-wildlife conflict is quite a large feature. You've got a large pastoralist community, the Maasai there. But there's conservation implemented there that is really trying to bridge the gap between this coexistence in such a fantastic way. And it's complete lunarscapes everywhere around. You've got these huge soda lakes filled with flamingos, but it's an area that's seriously impacted by drought and very little funding. So slightly unfortunately, when we were there, you'd see just constant zebra carcasses, wildebeest carcasses.
It was a terrible drought at the time.
But from a grassroots level, the ranger systems there are really there's a proper support structure.
And also, it's so this area is northern Tanzania, It's close to Mount Kilimanjaro. And what you have going on there, we spent a long time on the Kenyan side, which is, I mean, borders become, kind of weird when you look at them. The Maasai people, the border cuts straight through them. They have a huge community in the Kenyan side and a huge community in the Tanzanian side. And when we were in Kenya, we were filming for this a conservation outfit that, we talk about everywhere we go. They were called The Big Life. They focus on elephant, lion, conservation, but realistically they're all about ecosystem protection. And we spent we arrived there thinking, we'll film a little project here. We spent 3 weeks with these amazing men and women, and they've given up their lives to support local wildlife, and they're putting in wildlife corridors. They're doing elephant monitoring. They're pushing crop-raiding elephants out of local farmlands, and then they have such an innovative way of doing conservation. So sorry, I'm going to rant for a little bit here. This is something that I feel quite passionate about. So I'll give you one example of what they do. And this, for me, was the moment where I was like, you're doing the right thing. They have a thing called a predator compensation fund. The Maasai people are a very, very proud pastoralist culture, and they've stuck to their culture, which is good. It's really, really nice to see. But they herd mostly cows, sheep, and goats. One of their main problems with being a pastoralist community in a wildlands is lions, hyenas, and other predators. They really attack their livestock quite a lot. And when you don't have much and something comes in and takes 3 of your goats, it's really, really detrimental to your life. So historically, what would happen is if the Maasai community would have, say, 2 cows taken by lions, they would band together and they would hunt those lions down. And it's been a huge part of their culture for a long, long time. You're a warrior class, you're a Moran, and to prove yourself, you had to kill a lion, and as a group, and you would kill it with a throwing spear. And so there was it was awful for the biodiversity of the area, because the lions were getting hammered here, really, really bad. In a huge area, it was down to, I think it was 3 individuals in 2001. This conservation outfit, Big Life, which is all grassroots, stepped in, and instead of being like, right, we're going to fence the lions in, keep the people out, let them grow, they were like, we can't take the wildlife away from this area. We can't separate community from conservation. So instead of putting up fences and things, they looked at it objectively and they're like, how can we do something to help? So they put in 2 programs. They put in a thing called a predator compensation fund. So if your livestock is taken by a predator, they send a game scout out. They analyze the scene. And once they've analyzed the scene, if it's not your fault, you get, I think it's 2/3 of the value of your animal. So instead of losing everything, you have cash in the bank to help you. It's like an insurance system for animals. If it's in your boma, in your enclosure for your goats, and it's taken, you get 100% of the value. And people will look at it and be like, oh, but you could just make it up. But these are highly trained professionals. They'll come in, they'll analyze scenes, they'll check tear marks on the things, they'll check tooth marks. And that solved quite a lot of the issue. But then they were also the cultural side. You can't take that away from the Maasai people to hunt lions and prove themselves. So they initiated a thing called the Maasai Olympics. So they have, every year they bring in top athletes from Kenya. And athletics is a thing that we pride ourselves in as a country. And they have all of the normal athletics things. Then they use a thing called a rungu, which is a throwing club. And they have rungu throwing competitions. They have high jump in the traditional way, which is jumping off 2 feet and trying to get your head as high as possible. They have spear throwing, and the prizes for this are prize bulls. And just like that, from 2001 to now, they have had 1 lion killed in that time. And it's been amazing for the hyenas, for the jackals, for everything, because they no longer need it. They don't see lions as a threat. And now that population, I think, is up to 238. It's now a very, very healthy population there. And there's no fence there. There's no fence. People live next to the lions, next to the hyenas, next to the jackals. And seeing that and being like, you've come at this and you've really, really thought about every aspect. You've thought about the community. You've thought about the culture and the conservation. We love tying those 3 things together. And suddenly we were so honored to be there filming these guys doing just incredible things. And that was the moment for me. I was like, we are doing absolutely the right thing. And yeah, I'm sorry to have taken so much time to say
and that's just a tiny niche of what they do. They're responsible for protecting the last real super tuskers on the planet. So there's like a specific species or type of elephant there that doesn't really exist elsewhere in Africa. And Big Life are really just go above and beyond in terms of protecting that sort of genome. And that is what, if you imagine from a tourism perspective, what many a tourist will come to Africa to see is the sort of enormity of proper African elephants. And Big Life are responsible for the safeguarding of that gene pool.
And I don't know if any of the listeners or any of you guys have come to Africa and seen elephants. There's elephants, and then there's those elephants. They are, I mean, they will blow your mind. You have ivory on each side. They stand a good foot at shoulder above every other bull there, and they have ivory that often trackers will be able to spot them because the tusks are scraping the ground as they walk. We were lucky enough to film 2 individuals, and I'm sure you could Google these guys. One of them unfortunately died the other day due to human-wildlife conflict, which is incredibly sad, but I'll get onto that. But you can Google, they're called Tolstoy, as in the Russian author, and the other one is called Craig, the 2 ones that we were lucky enough to film. But there's quite a few in that area, and it's very unique because they're huge. But yeah, as I said, one of them died the other day. It was speared because it was crop raiding. And the thing with not having fences up, and you can't, also a fence doesn't stop an elephant. They're smart. They're some of the clever, most intelligent animals out there. They will look at a fence and it will take them 2 weeks, 3 weeks to figure out how to get through it. And unfortunately, he was crop raiding in the local community. And yeah, we're in a quite severe drought in Kenya at the moment. And if an elephant comes in and eats all of your crops, that's your livelihood gone. So the guy, I don't know who it was, but someone speared them, and then there were complications of the darting. And unfortunately, that individual passed away. But that would be a common story without Big Life there. They have done the most amazing job of securing the mammoth gene of the elephants. Like we've traveled since then, we haven't seen anything that comes close. And that is because of the men and women at a singular conservation initiative in the south of Kenya that I bet you no one has heard of. They are safeguarding the pinnacle of genetics in elephants. And they go unheard of. They don't get the exposure that they really should require and do deserve. And people will come and take photos of these things and not realize that it's the men and women who've given up their lives to spend time in the bush, away from their families, away from their farms, away from a livelihood, to protect a vulnerable animal. It's as you can tell, we're a bit passionate about it. Sorry, that was a bit of a
what kind of cost do these wildlife rangers have? So if we look at it in simple terms, what's either like a daily or a monthly expense for one of these groups?
It's boots are a massive feature of their expenditures, and there's the support structures surrounding wildlife rangers. Big Life are. I wouldn't group them in.
Kenya's very dangerous, to be honest.
But the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, as a general rule, like rangers will commit their entire lives to protecting wildlife and protecting the bush, and everything will be thrown into conservation. And yes, there's the overheads of boots, there's the overheads of, but they're humble, simple guys, and they get stuff done. But the contrast between the wildlife ranger and the farmer that his brother is probably, if you were to take your average wildlife ranger from Africa, the farmer has got a support structure in place for the point where he is old, and his sort of his children and everything can rely on the farm that he has built to take care of him when he is older. However, the wildlife ranger, who commits his entire existence to protecting wildlife, the bodies eventually give up, because it's a very grueling job. I mean, you're walking 40 kilometers a day, carrying sort of 30 kilo bags lots of the time. And at night, and obviously with all of the risks of buffalo, elephant, lion, but you will get to the end of that very sort of long slog of a job, and then you don't have that farm to fall back on. You don't have, and the support structures surrounding retiring wildlife rangers really are, that's pretty much one of the main reasons that we set off on this. It's a pension scheme.
It's non-existent, and that's it's something that we've found very shocking. Kenya, luckily, the charity that we work for, well, I don't say we work for, we associate with, are fantastic at that, and they're trying to address that in Kenya, but they're limited to East Africa at the moment. But yeah, we were chatting to a ranger the other day, and we were like, look, if there's one thing that you would like, because obviously we're partnered with this charity, what would it be? And he said, he sat us down and he said exactly that. He was like, look, we don't have a support system. We spend our entire life away from our families, protecting a vulnerable animal, and the moment that we become vulnerable ourselves, no one is there to protect us. And that was, it was shocking to hear, and it's something that we really would love to be able to address. And I don't know, it's because if you've ever been on a safari to Africa and you've seen an animal, the reason that animal is there is because of those rangers, is because of real blood, sweat, and tears. And I don't want to overstep the mark on the podcast or anything, but it's an incredibly dangerous job. It's I think more wildlife rangers in Africa have lost their lives since 2011 than in any of the Gulf Wars in Afghanistan or anything like that, any servicemen of that. It's well into the thousands, and you don't hear about it. So it's expensive. It's expensive to keep a wildlife ranger going. You have to feed them, clothe them. They go through a set of boots in 6 months. That's how much they are patrolling. A set of boots will last 6 months. You have to arm them. You have to train them. You have to provide a support system for their family. You have to hopefully provide a support system for them, a pension scheme for them.
Let's try and put that into dollars. So if you were to estimate what is their yearly cost of living, so if you were a retired wildlife ranger, what's your yearly cost that we're trying to cover?
But really actually quite small, because East Africa especially, it is and all of them live on quite humble diets. There's not the lavishness of the West does not really apply to sort of familial structures in East Africa. So 1,000,
I'd say it's $200 a month is what I would say, but that depends heavily on the area that they're in,
and depends on the
the family structure that's there, on whether they have been injured in the line of duty or anything. It's hugely dependent, and certain areas are a lot more expensive than others. East Africa is quite cheap, and $200 a month is not a huge amount. It really isn't. And that would happily, they would be very comfortable in their lives with that. And it's
but that is more than can be afforded to them by pretty much the entirety, other than a select few of the conservation outfits that we have filmed with or been exposed to. And that's purely because if you are looking at donor funding in Africa, the humanitarian lens really does just dwarf the conservation lens by a significant. And even though there is this overlap here, it's just the imbalance is actually quite sad.
Yeah, you'll see World Aid, UNICEF, all of the big names driving around everywhere in Africa in brand new Land Cruisers and this and that, and and it's the funding's not there. Especially there's funding for what we've realized from trying to raise money for these guys is you often have funding for a keystone species. Well, not even a keystone species, a poster child species. You'll have an elephant initiative, or you'll have a rhino initiative, or you'll have a I don't know, maybe a lion initiative or save the cheetahs or something along those lines, and it's very targeted and very specific to a singular animal. What we find incredible about supporting rangers is it's not species protection, it's ecosystem protection. You're there supporting the field mice, the smallest animals that you will never come across, the dwarf mongoose, the aardvark. We've been in Africa our entire lives. We've seen 3. They're the species that slip under the radar, but by supporting the people that are protecting them, you support the ecosystem as a whole. And definitely in conservation now, the idea of ecosystem protection is, it's the way forwards, and it's the way that we should go. And we love the fact that we can hopefully raise money for ecosystem protection that also benefits on the humanitarian lens.
So all it really takes, 24 people donating $100 could potentially support a ranger for an entire year.
Yeah.
Easily. Very easily.
And that's quite a high estimate. It's the ideal. That's what we would really, really be looking for. But yeah, when you boil it down to that, it's that. And how easily do you spend that amount of money in a day?
And how much do you enjoy as let's say, if you're settling in to the sofa at the end of a long day, how much do you enjoy putting on a bit of Planet Earth or a bit of National Geographic and properly indulging in sort of a really timeless place? But then behind that serenity, behind that beauty, are people that are almost entirely overlooked. They have grueling hard existence, but you're appreciating seeing that elephant on your screen. But it would just be great to connect, rather than just to be the forgotten sort of backstory to the wildlife the West so loves. It'd be great to bring them more to the forefront and and as you say, that is a very small amount of money to some of your listeners, but the impact it would make, both from a conservation perspective and a humanitarian perspective, is enormous.
Well, the fascinating part of that is you break that down. That is 28 cents a day for one person to donate $100 that potentially is going to support a ranger, which is supporting the entire ecosystem, not just the poster child, whether it be an elephant or a lion.
Exactly. You couldn't have said it much better.
You're preaching to the choir here. You really are, because that is how we feel. 100%.
Well, fortunately, we're preaching to thousands of people that listen to this podcast, so hopefully we can make a dent there. So on the other side of that, how do you guys support yourselves financially doing this trip?
So luckily, Tuk Tuks are quite cheap vehicles to run.
Yeah, man.
We operate on sort of 30 kilometers to the liter, which means that we don't consume very much fuel. We are...
How much is that in gallons? I have no idea.
Oh, yeah, gallons.
I don't.
Sorry.
We're very metric
system over here. But
we'll do that in the show notes. Don't worry.
Yeah, but a very, very small amount. As a reference point, Land Cruiser consumes about
5.5.
Yeah, 5.5, and we consume 30.
You consume 30 kilometers.
Yeah, 30 kilometers. Sorry, got the wrong way around. But other than that, we, as a videography crew, we have really resorted to a rather primal way of living, which is quite satisfying, in that we will go places along the way. Like, for instance, we have a biltong company, which is a dried meat of Southern Africa.
This is Jasper's dream since he was 4 years old. So I'm sorry that he's chosen this one, but yeah, bear with that.
But so we barter our videography services for goods and services. Yeah. But also just for accommodation. If we're in it, like for instance, here we are in Victoria Falls, you can't really wild camp around here. So when we reach towns or places where it's impossible to wild camp, we will approach lodges or backpackers, and we will say, do you want a professional grade video? Because we have gimbals, we have some slightly high grade camera gear, along with drones, underwater equipment, and all of the editing software on site. So we can provide them a fairly professional grade video in return for a bed, maybe a pizza, some
beers.
Some beers. However, we've just reached an absolute milestone of the trip in that I've contacted a biltong company that drive meat, like jerky that you get in. But no offense to the American listeners, but could be slightly better than jerky.
I'm slightly offended.
We've contacted a jerky company, biltong company, and we're making them a professional grade video, and our payment is just 5 kilos of dried meat, which is just great. And that sort of that overlaps into. We've also contacted a brewery. We're doing a film for the brewery, and we get a few beers for that as well. So we've found ways of we're barterers. We found ways of cutting the costs of it, and that's why it's taken us 8 months to get to Zimbabwe, is because if you're exposed to all of these little conservation outfits, sustainability projects, community projects that we film along the way, everything takes time, and if you find a lodge that you're making a video for, you, after the end of a lot of corrugations and dusty, sandy roads, it's nice to sit back a bit and enjoy the bartering of. But a bit of lodge living.
It's not like we sell our souls to everybody. They have to fit within our values. So we wouldn't be seen, filming a battery chicken farm or something like that. Like the biltong company that we're filming
or canned lions, or anything like that.
Like the walking with lions, and where it lives in a cage.
That makes sense.
We disagree with that on a very fundamental basis. But when it comes to accommodation and stuff, so we're 4. Well, we've actually just picked up a Zimbabwean, Zambian, Dutch, South African man, he's a very useful man, very charming. So we're now 5 in the Tuk Tuks, which is a bit of a stress, but our costs are probably $800 a month for
if that. This month we will have spent
for 5 people and 2 Tuk Tuks.
We will have spent 5. This month it will be about $500.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're young. Well, we're not so young anymore. Time in a Tuk Tuk will age you.
But we're beelining towards a chiropractor at age 35.
Oh man, I think when we get to South Africa, we should probably visit one. My back feels like it's turned into powder.
Corrugations in a Tuk Tuk is a life-changing experience. Your brain rattles so much because you can never get to the point in corrugations like you do in a car where you skim over them. You feel every single one of those corrugations, and by the end of it, you're dizzy. You're almost leaking amniotic fluid out of your ears.
Amniotic?
Is that not what it's called?
I think that's from the womb, isn't it? I don't know.
Is that not brain juice?
I don't know, but brain juice is coming out of your ears, is what we're saying. Especially when you're in Buttercup, because I don't know if any of you guys have driven a Land Rover, an old Land Rover. Before, and I don't know if you're familiar with corrugations.
Yes.
Those the bumpy things that, I don't know, they form on gravel roads. Good. Okay, good. But Buttercup, she's got a little cab, and I've really thought, because we've been driving we did the last 550 Ks on corrugations, and when you're in Princess Buttercup, I don't know what shakes, but it's everything. It seems to be the floor, the walls, the windows, the doors. I think the windscreen might be moving as well. It is like living inside of a jazz musician's drum set. It is insane, but it's very enjoyable. You put headphones in and kind of ignore it, but your eyes rattle in their sockets because your eyes are very well stabilized, so you can kind of see, but it tests them.
Stay young, fellas. You're doing good work.
We've really gone off on a tangent.
What is the biggest challenge for you guys on a daily basis? You've probably got blood-sucking insects. I think there's flies that you have to deal with. What is your personal biggest challenge every day?
Probably sand. As we get closer and closer. So our route now is through Botswana, through the Kalahari Desert, into the Namib Desert. And
that's like 3,000 miles of desert.
And we've been poking our noses in somewhat to the conundrum of sand, and how to deal with sand in a Tuk Tuk, which is with a rear wheel drive and incredibly heavy and just such small clearance and tiniest tires, like toy car tires,
like little tricycle tires.
And you can't get aftermarket tires for them, so you have to just go stock city tires. We look far and wide, impossible. So you hit a bank of sand, and it's just an immediate collapse, and then followed by just an incredible amount of time pushing. Ironically, for people that are driving a lot, the amount of physical exertion behind the driving. If you're not driving Princess Buttercup,
best day
you're great. You're not doing any pushing. The other guys, because Princess Buttercup is carrying the solar, it's carrying the kitchen, it's carrying the gas, carrying everything, and it's also got its bodywork is made of almost bulletproof steel.
It's like a car killer.
Crazy. But the amount of physical exertion you spend pushing Princess Buttercup is astronomical. It really is. Like, whether it be the back breaking from corrugations or the back breaking from Princess Buttercup, the back is in trouble later on in life.
It's not good. And also, like, you get stuck in the sand. I'm sure we're talking to seasoned overlanders here. You have sand traps. We have a wheel that is nowhere near where sand traps should go. We have a middle wheel. Next time any of you guys or girls or anybody is driving off-road, imagine having a wheel smack in the middle of your car and try figure out how you're going to miss rocks, sand, holes, everything. I'll say it once to learn. These things probably weren't designed for what we are making them do. And when you hit sand, I'm sure 90% of the listeners have power steering. So you hit sand, the power steering takes the brunt of that. You hit sand at our top speed, which is 50 kilometers an hour. The steering wheel, the handlebars will wrench you into the windscreen. It will hit and it will bite like the rudder on a boat. And it's really, really hard to keep them in a straight line. And you just get stuck the entire time. So sand, enemy numero uno for us.
And if you combine sand with a hill, it's almost game over. It really is almost game over.
The amount of times where we have been passed by people at the top of gravelly, sandy, because gravel's also not good because we lose traction, and we're playing with 8 horsepower here. Your lawnmower at home, if you push it, probably has 5.5 horsepower, and this is pushing. And we've filled this thing with a lot of gear. So when we've pushed it up to the top of the hill, there's many people have passed us with all 4 of us on our backs, nearly in cardiac arrest, just panic. Well, actually, it's 3, and the person driving Buttercup's very smug at the top because he's been pushed up the hill. But who'd thunk it? But a Tuk Tuk is not really designed for going up sandy, gravelly hills, and that is going to be the next 5,000 to 6,000 miles of our trip.
Oh,
dear. Exciting.
All right, Ivo, I'm going to give you the first shot at this. What is your most memorable moment so far that comes to mind?
Oh, man.
Probably.
Ivo, man, this was directed at me. You get out of here.
Oh, really? Did you say Ivo? Okay.
Most memorable, man. There've been a lot. I'll pick one because I know that Jasper probably won't pick it. And weirdly, it was actually when we were away from the Tuk Tuk. We got to Tanzania, and considering we are called Tuk South, we're really, really terrible at going the direction that we have chosen for our name. If we had gone directly to Cape Town, it would have been 6,000 and 7,000 Ks. We've done 10. And why? Is because we got to Tanzania, and our mother worked in this very, very remote section of Western Tanzania, and she said it was amazing. So we decided to go. It was a 1,800 kilometer detour. But when we got there, it was, out of this world. We went to this national reserve where, to talk about untouched by humans, it's very, very, very rare to get into a place where humans have had absolutely no impact on the wildlife there. We had driven X amount of kilometers out of our way. We had to take a 200-kilometer boat ride down to this. It's on the sides of Lake Tanganyika. It's called the Mahali Mountains. And we arrived there. It's out of a fairy tale. It has these, it's got tropical jungle coming out of these mountains. These mountains rise probably 1,000 meters off so it's a kilometer high mountains that fall into this lake. The lake is crystal clear, as in you can see probably 15 meters through it. It's bright blue. It has, and we arrived in this spot. We'd been boated in. We nearly sunk on the way there, but that's another tale. But we arrived in this place, and it was white sand beaches, crystal clear water, and jungle falling off these mountains. And we landed on this beach, and we were like, all right, time to set up camp. It'd been about 10 minutes, I'd say. We hadn't unpacked anything. And we had chimpanzees walking through our camp. Wild chimpanzees, just straight through the place we were staying. And they didn't mind that we were there. They really didn't. And
Beach chimpanzees.
You've got crystal clear water with crocodiles and hippos booming. Like hippos have it's my favorite noise in Africa. So you've got hippos booming there. You are sat, we were sat 4 to 5 meters away from wild chimpanzees. And so I studied biology at university. So for me, this is why this probably is so fascinating. But they were sat around a tree stump they'd break off different length twigs, strip them of their leaves, and poke them into tree stumps and use them. They were fishing for ants and eating the ants in front of us. And we were so close that they would look over at us, and you could see everything. And we sat there for like an hour and a half, and next to our closest cousins in the animal world, in the wildest jungle I've ever been to, on the edge of the most beautiful lake in the world. And the other side of the lake is looking into the Congo. And the Congo is a very romantic spot for me. And I don't know, it blew me away. It was quite an experience. And when they went to move off, it was almost as if it was like a show of status. The lead male stood up and he walked straight towards me. And chimpanzees are strong. They're incredible creatures. They're the most muscly things you've ever seen in your life. Just Google a shaved chimpanzee and it will give you nightmares for life. But this male came straight towards me. I froze because I was like, this thing could potentially rip me apart. And it just walked past me, and like a human in a club, it dropped its shoulder and just shoulder banged me. It just went, bah, and just tapped me, just to show me that he knew I was there and that he was the boss of that situation, then just walked off. And I don't know, for me, that was pure magic. It's something that I'd read about in lectures. I'd learned about throughout all of this theory, and suddenly it was just playing out in front of us, and there was no one there. It was us four, and it was magic. It was really, really magical. And that was purely because we decided to do the really dumb thing of driving 1,800 kilometers in the wrong direction. That's definitely mine.
Sounds like the right thing. Jasper?
So slightly from a different perspective here, but when we were at Oldoño Lengai, the place I mentioned before, but this really is one of the most harshest, like just volcanic, you are on the moon sort of levels of terrain. And this place, as we were saying earlier, had not seen rain in a very long time. We were animals dying all over the place. The rangers doing as much as they could, but it really, really was just like this boiling cauldron. Anyway, we went there, and we knew that, and this is one of the earliest sites of hominid discoveries in the world, really. So some of the earliest hominid finds were in the areas that we were in. Yeah. And lots of them were up these canyons that run into the edge of the Rift Valley. So we decided, it hasn't rained here in a long time. We'll just walk up this canyon, because at the end of this canyon, there's this huge cliff face where basically the entire water flow of this one river, so this was the only water source really of the whole area, it basically flowed out of the base of this cliff face. So it was this incredible series of shooting springs. We're like, we have to see this. Sounds incredible. So we set off. We're in the desert and it hasn't rained in a year. Everything is dying around here. Hardcore drought. So probably we don't need to bring tents or anything. Anyway, we were walking up this canyon, and we get to and it's a steep, sheer canyon. We get to our campsite for the night. We cook our pasta and soy chunks and everything. All go to bed very happily. We get we set up our tarp, SJK tarp actually. A couple of you American fellows have
donated to us, which was very kind.
They're real legends. Have helped us out. They've even given us a nice tarp that attaches to the back of our Tuk Tuks. But we didn't have tents. We just had these two tarps.
Bits of tarpaulin, tiny things.
But anyway, we wake up at probably, I'd say 11 at night, and the level of the storm that hit us was truly, truly biblical, and obviously completely unprepared in a canyon with quite a large river below us. And then the river starts rising. There's lightning everywhere. Then we started to experience rock slides from both sides of the canyon. And there's no support structure, there's no safety, there's no way you could walk out of the canyon because we walked quite far up it at this point. Death really was
raining from above.
It really was. When the level of landslide, the sound of it as you're cowering under your little tarp, trying to stay dry, and you have cliffs just breaking apart either side of you, and then with that came the attack of the centipedes, and a centipede is probably one of the most nefarious creatures of the insect world in Africa. Everyone, the poster child species of the insect world when it comes to the real evil critters are the spiders and the scorpions. But the centipedes, there was such a level of rain, were trying to find places of dry. So we were battling battling the rock slides, battling this rising river that was coming to claim our camp. And then the centipedes invaded the dry. So the whole night was spent just trying to swat off these incredibly venomous, insidious insects that were trying to come in, and you get bitten by one of them, and you really, really know it. Like you're almost hospitalized, and they were everywhere, and because we were the only place of dry in this canyon.
Rivers running in underneath the tarps, and I mean, I would say that I very gently moved the centipedes elsewhere. No, but it was down to us. Each person had a rock, and that was it. That was how you defend it. And because they're looking for a dry spot, and the dry spot, they're cold. They're insects. They don't give off body heat themselves. They're going inside your sleeping bag, and they're fast. And it was hectic.
It was a hilarious scenario.
Yeah.
In terms of how many facets of the environment that were coming to finish us.
Yeah.
It's just like it was rock hard place stood by a factor of about 20. Because if that river had risen just slightly further, it would have been swept away and just dashed against all of the rocks in this canyon.
And the ledge we were sleeping on is I would say, I don't really know how to work in feet. Maybe 20 foot long by about 6 foot wide, 7 foot wide. And then there's cliffs all around you. So there's nowhere to run, nowhere to go. It's dark. The only way you see stuff is lightning. And the lightning was going every 2 to 4 seconds. So it's and you've got thunder. And when Jasper spoke about the rock slides, it feels like the whole fabric of time is tearing. The half of a mountain is falling over the other side of a river that's 15 foot wide, I'd say.
Yeah.
It was that was oof.
And this is in a desert that has experienced no rain in nearly a year. I can't express to you the caliber of the drought we were seeing there. There are just dying animals everywhere because of the lack of rain. And the one day we decide to hike up this canyon is when the heavens open to biblical levels.
It was.
Well, you blessed the lands with your bad luck, so it probably worked out well for everyone but you.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Everyone but us. We went off as fearless explorers. We came back very, very humbled by the elements.
But it is good. It's good to have to hang on that precipice of life.
It is.
When you, and not many times I've ever experienced the sort of contemplation of death. Because when you are hearing these rock slides around you, you're like, it just one facet of that cliff goes, and you're gone.
It doesn't need to be a facet. It's one rock, and you can hear 150, 200 boulders that are, I mean, the size of a yoga ball. I don't actually know if it's called a yoga ball, but you know, the big bouncy thing. Yeah, and they're tearing down just the other side of the canyon too.
I can't even imagine what that must sound like with the thunder, with the lightning, with the...
Yeah, never leave the Tuk Tuk for too long.
Yeah, we came back and to see the comforts of Princess Buttercup. We were happy.
She was the stalwart. She was basically upset that we'd abandoned her. And she probably called on the gods.
That's what happened. That's what happened. So what keeps you guys motivated each day to continue doing what you're doing?
Oh man, there's a lot of joy in what we're doing. Without sounding too corny or too cheesy, we really love it. And we meet people along the way. So we both grew up in Africa. We were born here. We've been raised here. We're both Kenyan citizens. So this is very much home to us. And we've always loved spending time in the wilderness, spending time in the bush. So we've driven around in Land Cruisers. Well, yeah, we were a Toyota family. So we've been from when we were kids. This has been our idea of fun. Like it's something we hold very close to our hearts. Spending time in the wilderness, exploring, seeing the world, but when the moment that we set off in those tuk-tuks, like it's so hard to explain, because in a car, when you're driving from A to B in a car, you can go at 100 kilometers per hour. You have the windows up, you have the air conditioning on, you have the speakers playing, I don't know what. Music can be your thing, podcasts. Some people in the back will be scrolling through Instagram, and it's such a closed environment. Whereas you're in a tuk-tuk, you have no doors, no windows. You're going at 50 kilometers an hour if you're really flying. So we average 38. But you're going very slowly through an environment you've never seen before, and you have no choice but to soak up the experience that is there. The wind. If it's raining, you're getting rained on. If you drive through a town, you can smell the food comes straight into that tuk-tuk. You can smell, well, in Kenya, like chapatis in the morning. Every morning, like they're one of our favorite foods are like flatbreads. You can smell that on the wind. You can hear the bustle of a market as you pass through, and you're so a part of the environment that you're traveling through that it's truly, truly magical. It's like what we sort of postulate about it every now and again over the campfire at night. It's what we think traveling was 50 to 60 years ago. It's because you and we can't go more than, I mean, if we really drive 200 kilometers in a day, but Africa's big, and a lot of people will
tuk-tuks are very slow and small.
Very slow. So lots of people will drive from key place to key place to key place. They'll drive from this national park to this mountain to this hot spring, and they miss everything in between. We're so slow that we can't miss that. And we sleep on the side of the road. We sleep in villages. We sleep in schools, in police stations sometimes, and you get such a raw experience. It's unfiltered, beautiful traveling. Because sometimes you're in a field and the farmer comes up and you say, look, we can't trade anything, but how do you feel about your family? Look, we have a cinema screen on this. Would you guys like to sit down with us and watch some Planet Earth? You get to show people about animals, biodiversity that they've never even imagined, like a whale, like Blue Planet 2, where you've got fish eating birds flying out of water, and these people have never seen the sea, and it's I don't know, it's so different to it, and there's a real poetic sort of magnificence in being the traffic, just being there's no need
to ever look at that gap to overtake, or is there a cow that's going to come across the road? Is there a dog? You, by being the traffic, there's such a liberation in driving, in that that constant search for the gap no longer exists, and there's a platform to really absorb the surroundings you're driving through. You can see a couple of people that have clocked the tuk-tuk, clocked the fact that it's got Kenyan registration plates, and nudging their friends, and you can sort of have this beautiful moment of nice eye contact with them, where they're cracking up, laughing at the whole concept of tuk-tuks in the bush. But if you were blazing along at 80 kilometers an hour, that happens in a snap second. If you're going at 30 kilometers an hour, there's enough time for them to process it, you to process it, and you to share this whole like plethora of these nice, really beautiful transient experiences with all these people along the edges of the road, but also scenery that you pass by, that you are not just looking dead straight on the road. You've got enough time as the driver to gaze around and truly absorb everything you drive through.
And like, sorry, yeah, we're very passionate about our vehicles, but they also, like, when you're driving through Africa, lots of people have driven around here, lots of tourists come here, they drive around in big, really quite expensive vehicles, and a tuk-tuk is peanuts. It doesn't cost a huge amount, and it's an instant, it breaks down that barrier that often exists when you are traveling around in a vehicle in an area. Like, people see them and they're like, my car's definitely way better than that. And everyone's interested, everyone's smiling. You stop in a village or in a town or anywhere, everyone comes up, and you can't wind up the windows and sit there scrolling through your phone. You speak to everybody, and everybody wants to speak to you, which is I personally think, like, we get in cars every now and again, and
it's so sad. It's the most sad experience, because you are expecting the level of
when you've been driving a tuk-tuk,
you're expecting the level of tuk-tuk recognition, and you're sort of waving at everyone on the edge of the road, and then suddenly everyone's just like, and there's no reciprocity. And then you remember, oh, I'm in a car. Where the tuk-tuk is just such a novelty. Interesting. That it breaks down, as I was saying, every social barrier possible, and everyone and especially in Africa, there's a sort of class complex to overlanding. Like the rich South Africans that are the main overlanders of Africa, they come with their big rigs, and they've got their rooftop tents, and they've got their nice sound systems, the air conditioning, and they just blaze from one spot to the next. And the communities, and especially in rural Africa that they pass through, they'll never stop. Yeah. Well, because why would you? But they will view that vehicle as, that is a completely different entity to anything I'm used to. Whereas if you're in a tuk-tuk, you are in the working man's vehicle of Africa. Okay, Zimbabwe, they don't really exist, but the rest of Africa, the people they know probably own tuk-tuks or motorbikes, because that is the financially feasible option. So if you, as a white person, are driving around in a tuk-tuk, they're like, these guys are one of the boys. They're the same as us. And so there's never ever a class issue, which, as controversial as it may be, it's so satisfying to just be completely accepted by these communities that you drive through, and there's never a fear of theft, there's never a fear of the police, there's never a fear of immigration officers, because all of them are interested in the vehicle itself, but they really resonate with you choosing the sort of working man's vehicle of Africa as your vehicle of choice. You're not in this giant status symbol blazing from A to B.
And they are, just the last point, they are just smile machines. Everyone who sees them, it doesn't matter if they're road police, if they're a school kid on the side of the road walking to school, everyone sees them and they just smile. They look at them and they're hilarious. And yeah, so honestly, to keep going is not hard. Like we love
Next 4 years of our lives are just tuk-tuks, and I couldn't.
It's gonna be a good
happier.
4 years.
The one thing is, you do kind of give up on. Yeah, but you do give up on sort of relationships and girls and all of that. Conventional existence is, I'm afraid, a thing of the past.
That's gone out the window.
But if
Well, it's a good thing you've got Princess Buttercup.
Yeah.
Who needs it?
The princess.
What message would you put on every billboard back home if you could for people to read?
Oh, that's a good question.
But it would probably fall down to our previous conversation on just the overlooked work of, as much as we love overlanding and we love driving around and sort of experiencing, as we discussed, the raw Africa, I really do believe it would all boil back down to the importance of wildlife rangers and the level that sort of the general picture or complexion of wildlife in Africa doesn't give them their time in the sun, and I feel that is, and we collectively feel that is a great injustice, because they're just incredibly overlooked, and without them, you don't have your fancy safaris to the Serengeti. You do not true wilderness in Africa. And no offense to the States, you guys have some serious wilderness there, and we but your megafauna is essentially gone. Whereas
same with Europe.
Same with, but the megafauna in Africa is alive and it is thriving. And these guys are committing their entire existence, and they're trading off the security system that we were discussing earlier for this. That there's a general, such an admirable association and at oneness with the wilderness in these guys, and yet no one, your average tourist coming from the West will not pay them a single thought.
They don't even know that they exist. No one does.
Everyone just appreciates the bush, appreciates the wildlife.
You arrive in a national park, you get to the gate, you pay the gate person to get in, and the thing about rangers is they're behind the scenes. They are the men and women wearing camouflage just the other side of the bushes that you see, allowing the wild to remain wild. So our message would just be, have a little appreciation for the people that keep the wild, and that's not your big conservation outfits. That's the men and women who've dedicated their life to that. And we find it sad that people don't know they exist, don't know the work that they're doing, and don't know the wonderful job that they have done in definitely Africa. We obviously haven't reached the Americas yet. We'll get there, but that would be our thing. And also, just if it's that's very ranger centric, but if people don't want that, it would be just get out there, man. So many people turn to us and they say, "Oh, I could never do that. Like, hey, you guys are crazy. You're traveling around Africa in a tuk-tuk." Like, the reason we're doing this is because we all stood up to the plate and decided that, this is what we were going to do. And 4 years. There's just a bit of disturbance outside, so we're just going to move very quickly.
Elephants.
Sorry, a guy's just coming in and said that there's elephants right outside the hostel, which is...
sorry for commotion. Elephants, there turns out to be a lot of elephants in as soon as night hits in Victoria Falls, elephants just appear from everywhere.
You don't walk on the streets here at night because you could get...
So you're having to move because of elephants?
They're just outside our hostel at the moment. The dogs are going crazy. We were in a nice quiet zone, and everyone suddenly...
there's slight pandemonium. But we're in a quiet place now. So apologize for any of the
inconvenience. But what I was saying is, just really, back yourself, man. If you have a good idea and it's for a worthy cause, then go for it. What have you got to lose, really? We were in a unique situation where we're all young, but we made some sacrifices for it. We broke off relationships. We gave up on a lot of the comforts of life to do this, but the rewards are there. Just step outside your door, take the first step, talk about it with your friends, and once you've talked about it to everybody that you know, you have to go through with it, because you can't bail out. And so that's our more conventional thing. If we could only pick one thing, it would be the ranger thing. It would be take some time out of your day to think about the people behind the scenes that are keeping the wild.
And the idea that this is just centered on Africa is crazy. It's if you look at the marine rangers protecting all the marine reserves from sort of all like Papua New Guinea to Southeast Asia and they really are the unsung heroes, and they are so undersung. It is crazy. And just whatever the ecosystem, whatever the climate, there's always those people behind the scenes that are providing you with that wilderness. And there needs, and as an overlanding community that you guys reach out to, you guys are the people that really appreciate true wilderness. And true wilderness would not be made possible without people going above and beyond to protect it. And these are the guys doing it. And in Africa, it's a bit more hectic than everywhere else. But like, this is a shout out to just all of the rangers throughout the world, whatever the ecosystem, whatever the climate, you guys are the legends.
Yeah, so a big shout out to them. And if you go to a bar after listening to this, if you go, if they're UK listeners, to the pub, when you go to buy, I don't know what you drink over there, maybe we drink pints. If you buy a pint of beer, say, for yourself, or you buy a round for your friends, consider buying a round for the Rangers. I don't mind if it's not for our chosen charity, but do a little bit of research in your area, figure out if there are those support systems put out for those men and women who are doing this incredible thing, and just buy them a beer.
Doesn't have to be a huge donation.
Just a little bit. It's whatever the price of your drink is in your local bar, pub, club, wherever. Buy a Ranger a beer, because they really, really deserve it.
You guys are doing great work in bringing light to who is actually doing all the work behind the scenes. So we greatly appreciate you and what you're doing and your passion behind what you're doing. Is there anything that we've missed before we wrap it up?
To be fair, this has been an absolutely wonderful little session, and
it's been such an experience. So you haven't missed a thing, I don't think.
Well, we're going to wrap it up with our basic questions that end things on a fun note. What is a favorite genre of music for the both of you?
Ooh, Jasper, you go first.
To be honest, in a tuk-tuk on the road, sort of a bit of blues rock, or just to be honest, it's all American for me. Like, you're sort of not necessarily country, but that sort of like deep soulful blues rock for me. It just, and a bit of Motown thrown in there, a bit like
bit of BB King,
but just
that
like
wailing blues guitar. when we're driving in a tuk-tuk
with
through the
dust
wilderness.
being thrown up, and just just Savannah passing you.
JJ Cale, that sort of vibe. We've got a
bit of Bob Dylan, all of that. In fact, you guys, shout out to America for producing
good music,
the soundtrack to our tuk-tuks, because it really is. The rock music you guys have produced is just beyond good. And every strata of it as well. And it's just perfect for trundling when your spine is being rattled out of place. And you got that amniotic fluid leaking out, and you got dust in your eyes.
And you've got Bob Dylan next to you. Yes.
Wailing.
That's great. So what's a favorite drink in the morning to get you guys going?
Tea.
Well, Jasper's team tea. I'm very much coffee. It has to be strong. Unfortunately, with milk, no sugar. You can never put sugar in coffee. That's a wrong thing. But because we decided to save funds, we didn't know anything about Zimbabwe. We thought that we were going to enter into a police state. It's actually a wonderful, amazing place. We didn't know if they had supermarkets here. But unfortunately, our morning drinks, we bought what we thought was milk powder. Turned out to be palm oil creamer with sweetener added into it. And we have 6 kilos of the stuff. So unfortunately, our morning tea and coffee have I mean, the most disgusting milk in the entire world. It's not even.
But we've got to get through it.
We've got to get through it.
You got to
waste
get through
stuff. But yeah, a good coffee in the morning, nothing beats it. Nothing beats it. Strong though.
What's a favorite beverage at night? What kind of beers are you having at the pub?
Presently, I mean, don't get me wrong, a good beer is nice, but we have no refrigeration system in the Tuk Tuk. And also beers in there, we've been in but prior to arriving to Victoria Falls, where we are at the moment, we've been in very remote areas where even finding beers is quite difficult. Yeah. However, what we found, However, what we found in Southern Africa is this drink that all the locals buy, which is called chibuku, which is basically a sort of millet porridge style beer.
If you imagine porridge met beer on a night out, and they had an illegitimate love child, this is it. It's food and alcohol at the same time.
Yeah, you imagine that from it.
You eat it. It's thick. You could probably eat it, but it's $1 for a liter and a half. It doesn't matter if it's warm, if it's cold. It's nice. Great. I mean, we get a lot of odd luck for drinking it. But yeah, it's local millet beer. It's our drink of choice at the moment. But it changes whatever.
And it's good for your microbiome.
Sure it is.
No, it's wonderful stuff. And also the white communities in Southern Africa tend to not drink chibuku at all. So every time we go to buy it in these sort of dusty old towns along the road, there is a great appreciation from all of the locals there that you are properly indulging and sampling in their culture.
Yeah. If you're in a place, drink and eat as the locals do. There's a reason they do that. It's because it's really good. So it changes whatever country you're in.
And $1.50.
$1.50. $1 for a liter and a half. We're very thrifty. But yeah, we always believe in eating and drinking what the locals do. So at the moment, it's chibuku super, and it's great. We get a lot of odd looks, but it's yummy.
All right, fellas. So how can people learn more about you and get connected with you and hopefully make a donation?
So essentially that would all be through tuksouth.com, and
also our Instagram.
But that's all linked on tuksouth.com. Have we got the Instagram link?
Yeah, it's all linked. But to be honest, the easiest thing you could do, go on Instagram, type in Tuk South. It's TUK, and then south as in the direction on the compass. And in there you'll have in our bio is a link to our website. Our website has the donation link to For Rangers, which we would absolutely love if, I don't know, some of the listeners maybe bought them a beer. It doesn't have to be a big donation, anything like that. That's on there, and we would really, really appreciate that. There's blogs put up there, but our Instagram, we're a video production crew. So every 2 to 3 days, we do updates on the trip. We film the experiences that we go along. We have Tuk Tuesdays where we take a Tuesday to speak about amazing project, amazing person that's doing incredible things through Africa. So it's all on our Instagram. You'll have a link to our website. Or you can go through our website, which is tuksouth.com.
Okay, very good. That is wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to share, or anything else our listeners should know about you, the Rangers, and what you're accomplishing?
Not really, other than just if any of the listeners out there have any, wherever they are based, have any cool conservation suggestions, or any as we mentioned earlier, any people that are sort of trying to work towards the betterment of ecosystems, also just communities, and they have a cool project in mind, we will be on the road for the next 4 years, and we detour hard. If we find someone that is doing a cool thing, we will change the entire structure of our trip to go and film for them. And again, all pro bono. All of the like the concept is based around just trying to gain exposure and funding for that.
We would
and using social, because social media is such a, in this day and age, such a sort of controversial platform, and it's got to the point where it's so powerful in the Western world, but also just in the world in general, amongst the youth, that gone are the days of sitting down at the end of the day with watching Planet Earth. This is how people digest information these days. So if we can sort of use that as a vehicle to try and sort of inject a bit of conservation and a bit of appreciation for the outdoors into people that as probably on their just spending a lot of time on social media, then that is great, and that is a big part of what we are about.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, closing statement. I said that I'd put it on the billboard, but yeah, buy a ranger a bit. Really, it's not a lot. And know that they'll really appreciate that. That will go a lot further than a beer. It's just the cost of a drink in your local. Because
it's a 2-minute process.
2-minute process. It doesn't have to go through our link. We don't mind at all. If you would prefer to support local conservation outfits, I'm sure they're there. It's a couple of taps on Google away. If you've enjoyed this listening experience, if you've listened up until now, and we've provided anything to your life today, we would love it if you could show a bit of reciprocity, a bit of love back to the men and women on the front line of keeping. At the moment, it's just our conservation is obviously Africa based, but we're going to go through worldwide.
Awesome.
Just
Ivo, Jasper, you guys are doing great work. We just want to take a minute to really thank you for what you're doing, the way that you're doing it, the great humor that you bring to it, and just that lively human spirit that's really diving in and after something that's really important to the entire universe. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for taking your time to join us today. We're really looking forward to passing along to our listeners and doing our best passionately. I don't know if we can reach the passion level that you're at, but we will do our best to do that and get the word spread.
Well, thank you guys.
You guys are legends. We appreciate it so much. We can't stress to you how much we appreciate it.
Yeah, just taking the time out of your day to talk to a couple of
absolute pleasure
vagrants of the road.
And please do pass along our appreciation to the rest of the fellas on your crew. We know that it takes the team to get these things done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for sure. And they would have loved to have been here and chatted with you. But we found just chatting to two people is a lot easier, and they're very appreciative, and they said to us before we joined, send their thanks.
Awesome.
So it's a thank you to you, it's a thank you to the listeners, it's a thank you to the platform, and getting our voices heard is really, really nice.
Absolutely.
Cheers,
Our pleasure. All right, sounds good. Thanks, fellas. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one. Goodbye.